What's happening, guys? Trev back again and bring you another video. This one's going to be doing a review for one of my favorite comic book movies of all time, and that is going to be of Watchmen. So a few people were asking me in my recent Q&A if I could recommend some comic books or graphic novels that they could read that I thought were really some of the best there are. So I recommended a few, and one of the ones I definitely forgot to recommend was Watchmen. Now, you don't necessarily have to, at this point, buy or read the graphic novel comic book series for it. It does come in a trade, and it's a pretty good price. You can get it for $23, 20 bucks American. Watchmen, you get the whole thing right like this. And it essentially covers everything that happens in the movie and basically is almost exactly the same. I mean, one is in comic book form, of course, the other in movie form. And which one you prefer, I think, actually depends more on which medium you prefer. Do you prefer to watch a movie of something, or do you prefer to read it in a comic book or graphic novel? Now, me, I like both, but if I had to pick one, I would say that I prefer movie versions of stories as long as those movies are pretty good. I mean, they don't have to be spectacular, but as long as the score or the music's pretty good, the visuals are done pretty well, the acting's pretty good, and it's done in mostly the same way, I usually will prefer the movie version over the comic book. Now, that being said, with Watchmen, the comic book is rated as pretty much the greatest comic book story or single story arc. I guess you could consider it as one because it's got, you know, like maybe the equivalent of a couple trade paperbacks or one trade paperback with a bunch of issues put together. Single sort of self-contained comic book story ever written. It's pretty much regarded as that. I mean, I don't want to come out and say absolutely because everyone has their own opinion and everyone, you know, says has a favorite or thinks one is the best or another is the best. But I think Watchmen takes all the best elements of comic book heroes, characters, and puts them all together in one story so that you can kind of experience everything you pretty much would want to experience about superheroes in one spot, in one place. Which is why I think in terms of a graphic novel or a movie, anybody who's looking to get into comic book stuff should probably check out Watchmen pretty much right away. Now, the movie was released in 2009, and it was directed by Zack Snyder. The writers, basically, it's almost exactly the same, almost word for word from the comic book. Comparing the two, you know, I found that there are very few differences between both. I mean, almost, not even worth mentioning the differences that there are, really. So essentially, you have almost the same thing put on screen versus put in a book. Which one you like is up to you. It doesn't really matter. For me, I prefer the movie. Now, there's a few things about the movie I don't like, and then after that, I'll get into the things I do like. The things about the movie that are a little hit or miss sometimes, the number one thing for me is the music. The choice of music versus going with a score for this one, I think, is a little hit or miss. At certain parts, I really like the music. At other parts, I don't. Early on, when the movie's getting started, I think the visuals are really good for sort of the montage that they go through to introduce the characters and get us into the setting. But the music is a little bit, I'm not sure. The times they are changing. I think it was by Bob Dylan, is it? I'm not sure. I think so. But that's just the song. I don't know if it really fits. It's kind of like folk and maybe fits the time frame, I would say, in the situation. But it's a little bit, I don't know. With such a dark tone movie, they may have wanted to go with a darker theme or, you know, song or something like that. I think it would have fit better because it is really, Watchmen the movie is really dark. The comic book's pretty light, but the movie is very dark looking. Zack Snyder, I like his style of doing it really dark like that. It reminds me of David Fincher and some directors like that that do like everything is really, really, really dark. Really looks cool. I like it a lot. And I'm really excited for his Superman, by the way, next year. Can't wait for that. So to continue on, the music's a little hit or miss. I do like the Simon and Garfunkel music when you have the comedian and they go to his funeral scene. They play that. I think that's really cool. Fits it very well and is kind of touching, pretty touching. Um, the choice of sort of the dark theme with Watchmen. I like it a lot. I think it fits really, really well. Some people might not because in the comic book, you really don't get that kind of super dark, like everything, the color and everything doesn't really seem the same. So that's something else stylistically. It's a little bit different from what you might have expected. But I did like that as well. And aside from that one put down negative comment about the music, the costumes, the choice to actually go with the straight up full out costume look is a little bit, when it comes to comic book movies, kind of debated. You know, should they do it? Should they not? X-Men movies are a good example of that. You even have them poking fun at it, where Cyclops says to Wolverine, "Would you prefer yellow spandex?" You know, because they're wearing all this black everywhere, leather, black leather all over the place. So it's kind of like they are in costume, but they're not. You know, they're in like a more realistic looking costume. And this movie, I can kind of see why they actually made that choice to do that in X-Men. It is a little bit weird to see people in full out yellow and different bright colored costumes. It's a little bit strange to see that in a movie. A lot of them, their costumes was changed to a certain extent for the movie to look a little bit more realistic. But there are a lot of them, especially some of the older heroes that are shown in the montages and things like that, where they literally are wearing like bright, weird colored costumes, and it's very weird. But I actually, after a little while, got used to it, and I actually like it. I think it's just because they don't do it much in movies, so people aren't really used to it. But I think it worked out okay. Maybe they could have made the costumes a little bit darker to match the scenes and things like that in the coloring. But aside from that, whatever. I mean, it doesn't matter too much. The movie, I think itself, visually is beautiful. The slow-mo scenes where the comedian gets thrown through the glass and it all, you know, sort of shatters and it's in slow motion. Very, very cool. The scene where they cut out and you have, you know, him getting thrown through the air by the burglar that breaks in. And it's all in slow-mo from the outside, so you hear the music in the background. Very cool. I mean, the movie itself, I think, is one of the best comic book movies ever made. And I think it did pretty well at the theater, but for some reason, I don't think it did as well as like a lot of the others, like, you know, Batman, Superman, all that. But I think that's mostly because people don't really know the characters. They don't really know the storyline. It's never been really... Batman's had all these different comic books and all these different movies and things. He's been well established out there in the sort of like popular culture, but Watchmen hasn't really been as much. Yes, with comic book readers, but not with the average person. The average person would not know Rorschach or Dr. Manhattan or any of these characters. They go, what the hell? But everybody knows Superman and Batman and some of the Marvel characters too, the Hulk and all that, Iron Man nowadays. So that's that. But, you know, the movie overall I thought was fantastic. It matches the graphic novel very well. I think in certain ways it improves on it. The ending of it, I don't want to spoil anything, but the ending, for those of you who have seen it, most people have probably seen it at this point, know what I'm referring to. They changed the ending from the comic book to the movie, and I prefer the ending in the movie. I actually think that it is an improvement of the story because it makes the story feel more closer to home, and it involves the characters that your main core team more so than in the comic book where you have a third party alien or monster, so to speak, come down and become this threat. In the movie, they sort of, I think, handled it better. I think they did. I think they improved on it. Rorschach, I think, for everybody who reads or watches Watchmen, Rorschach is probably everybody's favorite character, and he has some of the most badass, you know, lines, and the scenes in the movie are done really, really well. Some of the most badass stuff I've ever seen in a comic book movie. I mean, you know, he's even at points, he makes Batman look like a sissy kind of, and I almost think it's like, you know, he's got the deep voice too. You know, he's got the Batman deep voice, raspy voice, which when I read it, I didn't necessarily think of Rorschach having that kind of voice. But I thought his voice was basically perfect. Let's see, what was the actor who played him? Jackie Earle Haley. I thought he did a great job with the Rorschach voice and everything because it does fit the character very, very well. Even better than Christian Bale's Batman, I think, in a lot of ways. Matthew Good, who played Adrian Veidt, Ozymandias, he did a pretty good job, but there was some things with him where it kind of seemed a little bit like he was too like Mr. Perfect and you just kind of knew he was the bad guy. Which I think if they would have kind of taken that back a little bit and not really made it so obvious that he was like evil, even the way he talks and moves and everything, then it might have been more of a shocker partway through the story when that certain event happens and you kind of learn about him a little bit more. So that's him. Dr. Manhattan is definitely a great part to Watchmen, or he's very important part of the story, because him as a character, he sort of takes the Watchmen and he brings them to sort of like a more cosmic type level, because he's a cosmic level being, and he sort of makes it even more of an interesting story because of all of the different things he says and the way he feels and how he feels detached and just how he deals with the situations and the ending and everything like that. And it all feels natural too, I mean, it feels natural. Like, yeah, he would, respond that way. He's that smart. He understands. And he's not emotional like most human beings are. Let's see. Who else do we have? There's a couple other. Night Owl, Dan Dryberg, Patrick Wilson plays him in the movie, and he does a pretty good job too, I think. He fits it pretty good from what I read in the comic books and how I would imagine him to be. Aside from that, I mean, you have other characters. There's lots of different characters in it, but those are really the main ones, and there are a few different cuts of it. I've seen a couple of them. The ultimate cut is like almost 4 hours long. It's pretty damn good, but it's got an additional storyline that is in the trade paperback that I think that the story actually for most people would be better off without it, which is Tales of the Black Freighter. It kind of is a commentary on a certain character in the story, and you kind of figure that out as you go through it. But I personally think that for most people, they'd probably want to watch just the regular Blu-ray version of Watchmen. But definitely, if I put together a top 5 or top 10 favorite comic book movies ever, I think Watchmen's going to be in the top 5 for sure. I'd have to sit down and look at them and analyze it, but I'm pretty sure that Watchmen, for me, I'd probably put it as either number 3, number 4, number 2, number 5, somewhere around there, because I think it is really that good, and it stands up well today. You can watch it again too and still feel blown away by it, because it's very, very well done, I think, overall, and pretty much, in my opinion, the best comic book story ever written, or at least one of them. Anyway, that's it for this video, guys. I'll see you for the next one. Hope you enjoyed my review of Watchmen. It's Trev, saying peace.